There's a strange and powerful truth buried deep in the journey of life. The less you have, the less you fear. We're told to accumulate, to secure, to prepare. But the more we hold, the more we fear losing. The more we possess, the more we're possessed by the fear of letting go. Yet there's a mystery that defies logic. The greatest strength often comes when you have nothing left to protect. Fear gains power when you believe your life depends on your position, your possessions, or your plan. But what if the very thing you're afraid of losing was never the source of your strength to begin with? What if the moment you find yourself with nothing left, that's when you are actually closest to discovering your real power? You see, there is a blessing hidden in the empty place. When your hands are empty, they're ready to be filled. When your strength is gone, that's when a greater strength can enter in. When you have nothing, you're finally free from the illusion that you are in control. And it's in that freedom that courage is born. Some of the greatest victories in life don't come when you're surrounded by comfort. They come when you're standing on the edge, when the safety net is gone, when everything you thought you needed has been stripped away. And yet, in that place, you find something eternal, a resolve. A peace that doesn't come from circumstance, a power that doesn't bend with the wind. You were never meant to overcome fear by adding more layers of protection around your life. You overcome fear when you realize that even if it's all taken from you, there's something within you that can't be touched, a calling that won't die, a purpose that can't be buried, a light that can't be extinguished. It is in the wilderness, not the palace, that true leaders are born. It is in the silence, not the applause, where destiny speaks the loudest. It is in the storm, not the calm, where unshakable faith is forged. You are not defined by what you hold. You are defined by what holds you. So stand, even if you're standing with nothing. Walk forward, even if the path isn't clear. Lift your eyes, even if the night is dark. Because it's not about having everything. It's about knowing that even with nothing, you are never alone. Fear may shout, but purpose whispers louder. And when everything else fades, purpose remains. That is the power of having nothing. That is how fear loses. The illusion of loss. How possession fuels fear. Fear doesn't begin in the presence of danger. It begins in the presence of attack. It's not just the threat that paralyzes us. It's the thought of losing what we've built, what we've earned, what we've come to believe defines us. The more tightly we hold to what we have, the more fragile our peace becomes. We fear because we believe we cannot live without certain things. We fear because we've convinced ourselves that our security, identity, and worth are tied to what we possess. Think about it. We fear losing a job because we believe it's the source of our value. We fear the end of a relationship because we think it defines our identity. We fear failure because we built our self-worth around performance. But what if none of those things actually define you? What if your true power isn't in what you can hold, but in what you can release? Fear thrives in the illusion for you. But the truth is, everything we think we own is temporary. Titles fade. Wealth shifts. Relationships change. Even our own strength has its limits. When we recognize this, not as a defeat, but as a release, we begin to step out of the grip of fear. We begin to live with open hands instead of clenched fists. There's a kind of freedom that only comes when you have nothing left to lose. It's the freedom of the soldier on the front line who knows the mission is greater than his own comfort. It's the freedom of the artist who creates not for fame, but because the message must be spoken. It's the freedom of the one who says, even if I lose it all, I will still rise. Why? Because their courage was never rooted in the temporary. When you no longer build your identity on external things, fear begins to lose its voice. You begin to live from a deeper well, one that isn't shaken by every change in the world around you. This doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop clinging. You stop measuring your worth by fragile things. And suddenly, fear no longer holds you hostage. This kind of courage isn't passive. It's powerful. It's not reckless. It's rooted. It says, I'm not afraid to lose because what matters most can't be taken from me. You can lose money, but not purpose. You can lose status, but not calling. You can lose the applause, but not the voice within you that says, hey, keep going. Ironically, the moment you stop fearing loss is the moment you become truly powerful. Because fear no longer has a handle on your decisions. You're no longer negotiating with fear before taking your next step. You move with clarity, you speak with boldness, you love without caution. Because your courage doesn't depend on outcomes. It's born from truth. So ask yourself, what are you afraid to lose? Now ask yourself, is your fear rooted in something that was never meant to carry your identity in the first place? Release it. Let it go. Not to become careless, but to become free. Free to act, free to trust, free to walk through fear with your head high. You will never conquer fear while holding on to the illusion of control. But the moment you surrender what you cannot keep, you gain something that fear cannot touch. Peace, clarity, and unshakable strength. When empty becomes powerful, emptiness is not a word we often associate with power. In fact, for most people, emptiness evokes weakness, lack, absence, defeat. It's the feeling you have when you've poured everything out and nothing seems to be coming back. It's what we fear when we lose the things we've depended on, relationships, jobs, health, dreams. But what if emptiness isn't the end? What if it's actually the beginning? What if emptiness is not the absence of value, but the preparation for something greater than you can hold? The truth is, we don't experience the fullness of what's possible until we're first emptied of what's familiar. In life, we carry so many things: expectations, identities, plans, distractions, even pride. We fill ourselves up with our own efforts, ideas, and strategies. And as long as we're full of those things, there's no room for anything new, especially the kind of strength that doesn't come from us. You may feel like you've been emptied against your will. Maybe life took something from you you thought you needed to survive. Maybe a dream you were building fell apart. Maybe your own strength finally ran out, and now you're left wondering what to do next. That moment, that space, that void, it's not your defeat. It's your invitation. When you're empty, you're finally ready to receive. Not just any strength, but supernatural strength. Strength that doesn't come from your own ability, your own cleverness, or your own control. Strength that goes beyond what you can explain. It's not weakness to admit you've come to the end of yourself. It's wisdom. Because the end of you is the beginning of what's greater than you. Look at the most transformational seasons in history, in stories, and even in your own life. They often follow a stripping away, a desert, a loss, a letting go. And in that barren place, something awakens that couldn't have emerged in any other way. It's in the silence that we hear most clearly. It's in the lack that we appreciate the abundance to come. It's in the void that the miracle is born. You may say, but I have nothing left to give. Good. That means what's coming next won't be dependent on your strength alone. It means when you walk through the fire and come out on the other side, you won't be able to take credit for it. And that's exactly the point. Because sometimes what we need isn't more willpower. Surrender isn't giving up. It's opening up. It's saying, I'm ready to stop doing this on my own. And when you reach that place of emptiness, your heart finally has space for courage to rise, for vision to return, for purpose to find you again. The empty place is sacred. It's where your real strength is forged. Not because you never felt weak, but because you didn't stay there. The people who walk in the greatest power are not those who have never fallen. It's those who stood up after the fall, who believed again when there was no evidence, who saw a future when everyone else saw failure. If you are in a season of emptiness, take heart. This is not the end of your story. This is not the end of your story. It is the place where the greatest strength is being born quietly, invisibly, deeply. And when it finally rises, it will not be something you worked for. It will be something you were made for. So don't fear the empty. Embrace it. It is not your defeat. It is your foundation. And from that place, the kind of power that cannot be shaken will emerge. Courage that walks with fear. We often think of courage as this shining, flawless quality. A bold, fearless champion standing tall with no hint of doubt. But real courage doesn't look like that. In fact, most of the time, real courage has shaky hands. It walks with a pounding heart. It shows up with fear still in its shadow. Courage doesn't wait for fear to leave the room. It walks forward even when fear is screaming in its ear. It's the evidence that courage is needed. If you weren't afraid, it wouldn't be courage. It would just be comfort. And growth never comes from comfort. The most powerful steps you will ever take in life are the ones you take while still feeling afraid. That's what separates those who fulfill their calling from those who stay stuck where they are. Not that they were never afraid, but that they moved anyway. Think of the moments in your life where you grew the most. Chances are they were marked by discomfort, maybe even terror. A decision to leave something familiar. A moment you had to speak up when your voice was shaking. A time when you had to trust a door that hadn't opened yet. Those weren't easy moments, but they were defining ones. Because in each one, Fear didn't win. You didn't wait to be fearless. You just decided fear wouldn't be the one steering your life. It is a dangerous lie many people believe, that they have to get over fear before doing the hard thing. But what if the way to weaken fear is actually to move through it? What if courage isn't something you wait for, but something you create? Step by step, decision by decision, day by day. Fear is loud, but it's not wise. It shouts about everything that could go wrong. It tells you that failure is final, rejection is unbearable, and risk is destruction. But none of that is true. You failed before and got back up. You've been rejected and still moved forward. You've taken risks and found rewards. That history is proof. Fear isn't always honest. The strength that carries you forward doesn't require perfection. It doesn't demand that you feel brave. It only asks that you trust the vision more than the voices of fear, that you believe the promise more than the problem, that you take one step, just one, even when your knees are trembling. And when you do, something begins to shift. Fear doesn't disappear instantly, but it loses its grip. Why? Because every time you act in spite of fear, you remind yourself who's in charge. You break the illusion that fear has power over your life. You reclaim your ability to choose, not based on emotion, but on truth. Courage isn't loud. Sometimes it's the quiet decision to try again. Sometimes it's the whisper to yes to something unknown. Sometimes it's walking into the room even when you feel invisible. But every act of courage adds up. And eventually, those small, brave steps become a lifestyle of strength that no storm can shake. So stop waiting to feel fearless. Instead, decide that fear will not decide. Let courage rise not from the absence of fear, but from the deep belief that what's ahead is worth walking through the fear for. You may be afraid, but you are not defeated. Fear may follow you, but it does not own you. Walk forward. Shake if you must. Stumble if you have to. Just don't stand still. Because courage is not found in avoiding fear. It's found in refusing to bow to it. When less reveals more, we spend so much of life chasing the next thing, the next promotion, the next relationship, the next affirmation from someone else. But have you ever noticed that sometimes the very things we think we need are actually standing in the way of who we're meant to become? When you have nothing, no status to defend, no possessions to cling to, no crowd to impress, you find out what really matters. You find out who you really are, and that's when clarity begins to rise. Sometimes the stripping away is painful. Losing the job, losing the approval of people you once counted on, losing what made you feel secure. But that loss can be a gift in disguise. So when all the noise fades, what's left is something pure, something focused, something eternal. Distractions fall away. And your purpose, the core of why you're here, starts to speak louder than ever before. Having nothing forces you to stop leaning on things that can't carry your calling. You begin to realize that your purpose was never tied to your possessions. It was never based on popularity. It was never defined by your paycheck. In the silence of lack, your spirit begins to awaken, and the voice of destiny begins to stir. This is why some of the most powerful people are the ones who went through seasons where they had nothing. No applause, no money, no platform. Just a whisper of purpose and a heart still willing to believe. That's where strength is born. In the absence of comfort, we discover the presence of calling. There's something sacred about having nothing, because it removes the illusion that you are what you own. It invites you to live from your center, not your circumstances. It teaches you to measure value not by what you hold in your hands, but by what you carry in your heart. When distractions are stripped away, priorities are reordered. You begin to see with sharper eyes. You're no longer running for the sake of achievement. You're walking in alignment. You no longer fill your time to avoid stillness. You embrace silence to hear deeper truths. You're no longer living for others' expectations. You're moving in step with your deeper convictions. This doesn't mean poverty is a virtue or struggle is the goal, but it does mean that we often meet our truest selves in the valleys. It means that purpose isn't always born on the mountaintop. It's often forged in the fire of lack. And in those places, we learn to build a foundation that isn't shaken when the winds blow. It's not in what you possess, but in what you're anchored to when everything else is gone. And when you're anchored to purpose, nothing can shake you. You become unstoppable, not because of what you have, but because of who you've become. So don't despise the seasons where it feels like everything's been taken from you. Don't waste time mourning the distractions that have fallen away. Instead, lean in. Ask the deeper questions. Listen for the whisper in the silence, because that's where greatness often begins. Not in the abundance of things, but in the clarity that comes from having nothing left to lose and everything within you left to give. In that empty space, purpose has room to rise. And when it does, you'll look back and realize losing what didn't matter was the beginning of finding what always did. Surrender is not defeat. Its power fear thrives in the illusion of control. It feeds off your belief that you can manage, manipulate, or maintain everything. That if you just hold tighter, plan better, or protect more fiercely, things will stay together. But the truth is, much of life is outside of our control. And the sooner we stop clenching our fists and start opening our hands, the freer we become. The human instinct is to grip harder when things feel uncertain. We want guarantees, we want timelines, we want to know what's next. But fear uses that desire against us. It whispers, what if you lose everything? What if this doesn't work? But what if you're not enough? And suddenly we're no longer living. We're surviving. But here's the secret. You were never meant to carry the weight of the world. You were never meant to control every outcome. The fear that's pressing down on your chest, it loses its voice the moment you realize it was built on a lie, that your peace depended on your power. Letting go isn't weakness, it's wisdom. It's recognizing that surrender is not a sign of defeat. It's an act of alignment. It's placing your trust not in your ability, but in something greater. In purpose, in meaning, in the idea that even when you're not in control, you are still being led. Think about it. Some of the most liberating moments in life happen when things fall apart, when the plan breaks, when the path disappears, when the safety net is gone, and strangely in that uncertainty, you begin to feel more alive. Why? Because you're no longer trapped by the illusion of control. You're finally free to move forward without pretending you have it all figured out. When you embrace that truth, fear loses its leverage. It no longer has a hook in you. You stop asking, what if it all goes wrong? And you start asking, what if I learned something I never could have planned for? You stop praying for comfort and you start praying for clarity, for courage, for boldness to step into the unknown, not because you've conquered fear, but because fear no longer owns you. There's a quiet confidence that comes with surrender. Not the kind that shouts or shows off, but the kind that stands firm when everything shakes. It's the confidence of someone who knows that life is unpredictable, but purpose is unshakable. That storms may come, but your foundation isn't built on weather, it's built on truth, doesn't tremble. So if you're facing fear right now, if uncertainty is surrounding you, don't resist the surrender. Don't fight for control that was never yours. Instead, lean into the freedom of letting go. Hand over the outcome. Trust the process. Release the pressure. That's where peace is found. Not in perfect plans, but in powerful surrender. You'll find that fear's grip weakens when you stop trying to play God in your own life. When you admit that you're not in control. And that's okay. Because the one who gave you breath didn't do so to watch you panic. You were created to live with faith, not fear. With boldness, not bondage. And with open hands, not clenched fists. Let that truth settle deep. You were never in control to begin with. And that's not something to fear. It's something to celebrate because that's the beginning of real power. That's the start of real freedom. That's where your courage begins. Fear has no grip when you let go of what's not yours to keep. There is a strange sacred strength that rises in a person who has nothing left to prove, nothing left to hide behind, nothing left to protect out of pride or pretense. In that place, stripped down, emptied out, fear loses its grip because fear depends on something to latch onto. It needs your titles, your image, your possessions, your reputation, your expectations. If it can get its hands on those, it can paralyze you. But if you release those things, suddenly fear is standing there with nothing to grab. We live in a world obsessed with gain, climb higher, achieve more, show more, be more. And somewhere along the way, we start measuring our worth by how much we've accumulated, physically, emotionally, even spiritually. But the problem with gain is that it makes us vulnerable to loss, and loss is where fear breeds. What if they leave me? What if I fail publicly? What if I don't measure up anymore? What if they see me without the mask? But what if you laid it all down and said, even if I lose this, I'll still be... Even if I don't have the status, the platform, the praise, I still have purpose. That's when everything shifts. That's when you realize true strength isn't in how much you can hold. It's in how much you can release. People who fear nothing are not always fearless by nature. They are often people who have lost what they thought they couldn't live without and survived. People who have walked through the fire and found that even the flames can't destroy the soul. That even if everything around them burns down, what is eternal in them cannot be touched. The truth is, many of us are carrying weight we were never meant to carry. We cling to people's opinions, to perfection, to comfort, to a sense of control, and we call it security. But it's not security, it's bondage. And the only way out is through surrender. Through saying, if I lose everything the world says makes me valuable, I am still valuable. When you have nothing to lose, you don't fear rejection, because you're not dependent on acceptance. You don't fear failure, because failure is no longer the enemy, it's the teacher. You don't fear being seen, because you've stopped hiding from yourself. And you don't fear death, because you've already died to what never gave you life. That's where real freedom is found. Not when you gain more, but when you no longer need more to feel full. When you can sit in the silence, stripped of performance, and still feel like a masterpiece, that's when fear has nowhere left to hide. So let this be the year you let go. Let go of proving. Let go of pleasing. Let go of pretending. Stand boldly in the truth that you are not the sum of what you have or what others think of you. You are who you are, not because of what you hold, but because of what holds you. And when fear tries to creep in again, remind yourself it has no grip here. Because I've let go. I've surrendered what I thought I needed to survive, and I've discovered something deeper, something unshakable. That kind of soul cannot be intimidated. That kind of heart cannot be crushed. When you have nothing to lose, you finally start to live. And that right there is power.